What is up, everybody? It's the Raw Prospect Podcast. We are back, man. It's episode 50. Hopefully the best episode yet. I just want to take a moment, and just say, thanks to everyone that helped us along the way, everyone who's listened to the show. We appreciate each and every one of y'all. Shout out to Max Vore for leaving a 5-star review on iTunes. I saw that. I see you, bro. Shout out to everyone today that sent in questions for this special episode. And, I'm just going to give it off to you, Michael. What thoughts you have about being with our 50th episode here?
Well, it's pretty unbelievable. I mentioned at the beginning of last episode that it has been a little over 2 years since we started doing this, and we've come so far. It's unbelievable how far we have come. To get to this point where we're, have the split screen on Zoom, we're posting our episodes on Spotify, we're getting them on Apple Podcasts, we're, have the split screen Zoom where you can see both our faces, and you can, we've advanced technologically, but I think we've also gotten better just in terms of, we've come so far, we've grown so much in terms of just presenting our information in a way that we think is good for what we want to do. This is a sports podcast, so we give out we're pretty knowledgeable about sports. We give out a lot of, I give a lot of statistics. You come from different angles. We're both, we agree on a lot of stuff, but when we disagree, we have good arguments on both sides. We've just come so far in all aspects. And to get to episode 50, after the first couple episodes, I, was unsure if we'd even get to 20. Yeah. That's how far we've come. So, thank you to everyone, as Imy said, who has listened to the podcast, subscribed to the podcast, given us suggestions, whatever you may have done to contribute to this. We greatly appreciate it. And hopefully, today we got a lot of stuff to get into. We got some fan questions. We're going to pick a great slate of NFL games against the spread. And then, like last episode where we did the Eastern Conference, we're going to get into the Western Conference over-under win totals. So hopefully this will be our best episode so far. So that's all I really have to say.
Yeah, exactly. Just thinking about the fact that we started this podcast on Twitch, like a gaming streaming service.
Right.
That's wild. So yeah, we're just gonna get right into it, man. I feel really good about where we're going with this show. I feel like we never really, we obviously wanted to grow, but we always just wanted to have fun with it and talk about stories we cared about, and I feel like we've always stayed true to that. And I've always this has been one of the things in my life that I've just been able to be proud of, over these last couple of years. I feel like that has value no matter how you put it. Absolutely. So, yeah, man, let's get into these fan questions. So the first question, all right, we have Ben Harvey, my teammate up at Bethany College, the man, the myth, the legend from Liverpool, England, man. Michael, what did he say for us?
All right, here we go.
Who do you reckon would win in a fight, a bear or a shark, Amy?
All right, if you couldn't understand his accent, basically what he asked is, who would win in a fight, a bear or a shark? So I'll let you take this one first.
Okay, well, so there's just for context here. He texted after to clarify the location. So So this would be a fight in an octagon that's half forest, half water. So I feel like that plays a factor in it as well. But I'm taking the bear here. All right. I think I feel like the bear has more can bring a more varied attack to this fight. And he's got claws and shit, man. Like the shark, all he's got is his mouth. Like that's the only thing he's got. I mean, he got to jump out of the water and bite. Like if the bear can just like dodge and just slap him, he's done. He's done, man. Get him out of the water and he's done.
You mentioned the location does matter. The environment does matter because these are animals and they thrive in different environments. I think the fight's going to come down to which animal or which mammal will be able to hold its ground better in the opposing mammal's environment. I think the bear has a better opportunity or better chance of surviving in the water with the shark and, holding its ground in the water with the shark because bears can swim. They're adequate swimmers. Than the shark would have on land in a forest.
Right.
You know what I mean? So sharks are dangerous, and it, of course, I guess would come down to, what kind of shark it is. Because if it's a great white, that's a totally different story. Maybe the great white would be able to, I don't know, do something with that. But bears in the forest, that would be a total mismatch because sharks don't live in anything but the ocean. So, obviously.
Yeah.
Okay? So, and I think the bear could hold its ground in the water. So, yes, I do agree the bear probably wins. But if this fight happens 10 times, I bet the shark can get 2 or 3 of those.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so next question. All right, this is a question. This is the age-old question. Okay, every warm-blooded male has always wanted to know the answer. Right, we're gonna answer it right here and right now. All right, tits or ass? Okay, this is a question from Brandon Hoff, old teammate of ours from Vandergrift golf days. Man, I think it's personal preference.
I'm an ass guy.
I'm an ass guy too. But I mean, so here's my thing. Okay, here's my criteria. All right, if I'm like rating a girl on attractiveness, I feel like a nice ass is what brings her into the baddie tier. When like if she has like medium sized breasts or like big breasts, I'm like, I feel like big breasts are more common, so it has less value to me. If I see a big ass, man, I'm like, damn, that's a baddie right there. All right, like, damn. So
I'm on par with you. I think the tits are, they're less valuable than the ass. If we're gonna make a sports analogy, if tits and ass were going for MVP, then the ass would win MVP.
For sure. Yeah.
That's my take.
Oh man, this is wild, bro. Oh man. But yeah. There you go. There you go, man.
It's personal preference. So
yeah, for sure. And to the ladies out there, no disrespect, we're not like perverts. Please don't get the wrong impression.
I got nothing against a good set of tits, but if we're talking about tits versus ass for MVP, you got to go with ass.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think that settles it, man. I think that's the answer right there. Okay, third question. This one's from Connor Lees. Bethany team captain, the man, the myth, the legend. All right. So he drew a giraffe for us. All right, and he wanted us to talk about his giraffe, and I was like, okay, let's do it. Okay, so looking at this giraffe, I got it pulled up right here. This is a high quality giraffe. I mean, okay. So the first thing I noticed, right, is like the spots on his body, right? It's like they're like shaped like well, and they like, and like the legs look 3D and stuff, man. Like that's a good giraffe, and I think it's a baby giraffe because it's got like the twinkle in his eye. Yeah. I mean, Captain, you really outdid yourself this one, man. You really did a good one. All right.
I did see the giraffe. It was about 100 times better than I could draw a giraffe.
Same for me.
I gotta applaud his artistic ability. That's very impressive. If you can draw, I got respect for you because I have no artistic ability whatsoever. So that's just coming from a guy who doesn't have any like competence in the art category.
Right.
So, very good giraffe. I don't know why you drew the giraffe, but we saw how John Morant was able to meet the new baby giraffe at the
Wait, what?
at the Memphis Zoo, and the name of the giraffe was Jaw Raff. So I don't know if you guys saw that, but it was all over the internet. So that giraffe kind of looks like Jaw Raff to make a sports analogy.
Like we always do. But hey, the captain is indeed a man of many talents, man. Shout out to you, man. All right. Next question is from Will Fraher, freshman on the Bethany golf team, Cardinals fan. His question, he writes in, he says, is Kyler Murray better than Lamar Jackson? This is a really interesting conversation. I really like this question. This is the first sports related question, weirdly. But hey,
I appreciate his question. I don't know who he is, and you said he was a Cardinals fan, so I respect this question. And you know me, if you've been listening to this podcast for any amount of time, you know that I hate the dislike the Baltimore Ravens in a very bad way, but I still respect the Baltimore Ravens.
Right.
I get where he may be coming from, but Lamar Jackson is better than Kyler Murray, and I still don't think it's particularly close. If you look, I know Lamar Jackson has struggled the past couple games. He had COVID in there, so his practice schedule and all that is kind of getting thrown off schedule. But over the first 33 games of his regular season career, Lamar Jackson has more touchdown passes than Peyton Manning did in the first 33 games of his career, a higher completion percentage than Tom Brady did in the first 33 games of his career, less interceptions than Patrick Mahomes did in his first 33 games, a better passer rating than Aaron Rodgers did in his first 33 games, more wins than Russell Wilson did in his first 33 games, and Russell Wilson, through his first 9 seasons in the league, has never had a losing season, and more rushing yards than Michael Vick, and just broke his single-season rushing yards record last season. For me, I think Kyler Murray can become better than Lamar Jackson, but as of right now, we need to slow down. Lamar Jackson just won MVP. He's still, we saw it on, he can still, run. He's a competent passer. He needs to improve some in that category. He is a little loose with the ball at times, but so is Kyler Murray. I want Kyler Murray to make the playoffs first before we say that he's better than Lamar Jackson. If you look at it, I know Baltimore has lost, 3 of their past 4 or something like that. But if it weren't for DeAndre Hopkins making an amazing catch in the end zone against Buffalo on that Hail Mary pass, which, with all respect to Kyler Murray, was a very, very, very good pass. I mean, that was pretty much the only place that Hopkins could get it. But if it wasn't for Hopkins making that very tough catch, the Cardinals, I believe, are on a 5-game losing streak right now. So right now, Lamar Jackson is still better than Kyler Murray. But next year, come back to me. I might say differently.
Yeah, I think I definitely think that Kyler has the potential to become better, actually pretty soon. I think if Kyler, if he goes out and he beats, if he wins a playoff game this year, say he wins a playoff game this year, I'd say you could make the argument, and I wouldn't be mad at you. You know, it's tough. I still think you have to give Lamar the edge, simply because he has the larger body of work at this point, and what he's done so far in his career has been so impressive. And what I've seen from Kyler Murray, it seems to me like he has trouble being consistent week to week. He comes into big games and he has a fantastic game, like he did in that game in Arizona against Seattle on Sunday Night Football. He'll have a game like that, and then he'll also have a game where they play like they did against New England, where he struggles a little bit and he's not able to lift his team to the win, despite the fact that they were the better team. So, I think for that reason, I got to give the edge to Lamar Jackson, because I feel like you can make the argument that Kyler has better offensive weapons than Lamar Jackson, and Lamar Jackson is able to do what he does. You know, because really, Lamar's only dynamic receiver is really just Marquise Brown. And then he has a great tight ends, but that's pretty much it. He makes it work despite not having really a true elite receiver. So
I like what you brought up in terms of the playoff conversation. If Kyler Murray ends up leading the Cardinals to the playoffs, and I know we made predictions last week on the pod, episode 49. Go check that out if you haven't already. But I know we made predictions for the Cardinals to sneak in as the 7 seed at 9-7. After last week, I have my doubts, but we'll get into that later in the podcast. But if you look at what you said about the playoffs, if Kyler Murray, because we've seen Lamar Jackson, small sample size, but we've seen what Lamar Jackson has done in the playoffs, and he's struggled. If Kyler Murray can come in and possibly maybe pull off a first-round upset, a wild-card upset in the playoffs, and he plays really well, then we can have that conversation. But right now, the edge has to go to Lamar. 26-7 as a starter. We know he's 0-2 in the playoffs, but he's still very young. And I know Kyler Murray's still young, but he's, a little over halfway through his second season. Let's calm down. Lamar just won MVP. Let's wait until we see what these two very young, very good young quarterbacks do when it matters the most.
Right.
And so far, we have to give Lamar the edge, but it's not a shot at Kyler Murray.
Right.
So,
yeah, I think he can. He has the potential to win an MVP in the next couple of years, and I'm not even saying that as an exaggeration. I truly believe that. But with that, we'll move on. Our next question, it's another question from my guy Ben Harvey. He sent in a voice message again, so I'm just gonna transition that over to Michael.
Which one is it?
Well, you can play either one. I think they're both back to back on our list. So, whichever one you play, we'll talk about that one.
If you had to put Wolfie on a footy pitch, what position would you put him? And then secondly, why would you put him on the bench?
This is a question primarily for you.
Right. Okay. So, a little bit of context here. So Wolfie. So our golf team, we have this, I guess, team tradition. Well, like basically once a week or once every 2 weeks, we'll head over to the wrestling mats and we'll play footy or soccer for you Americans out there. But so Wolfie is a senior on our golf team. He's got a skinny, wiry frame, but I mean, from what I've seen, he's not that bad at soccer. But here's the thing, though. First of all, why the frick would you make me a soccer coach? I don't know crap about soccer, so I'm going to put Wolfie in the starting lineup. I'm going to put him at midfielder, and I'm going to let him go to work, man, because I know I'm going to get fired anyway, so I'm going to put my guy in there. So, hey.
I'm with you. The only soccer I watch is once every 4 years for the World Cup. That's literally the only soccer games I watch. It's nothing against soccer players. I know some soccer players. Nothing against them. I have nothing against soccer. It's just we're more into other sports.
Right.
So, put him in. See what he can do.
Yeah.
I don't blame you.
Let the guy play, man. You never know.
Yeah.
Hey. Okay. Next question. We got another one from Ben Harvey.
Here we go.
Imy, I want you to talk about how Derek Carr is an unbelievable quarterback.
Okay, so he wants us to talk about Raiders quarterback Derek Carr.
Yeah.
So, it's interesting with Derek Carr. I think he's if you're going to rank quarterbacks, he's top 12 quarterback. Mm-hmm. I just, have a couple statistics. I'm not, the past couple games, the Raiders are struggling as a team. Some of it's on Derek Carr. They got blown out by the Falcons. And they almost lost to the laughable, no words can describe how bad the New York Jets are, and the Raiders almost lost to them. And if it weren't for the dumbest defensive call of all of NFL history, or at least in my lifetime, they would have lost the game, most likely. Right. If it weren't for Greg Williams calling that zero blitz, where, they left Henry Ruggs, probably the fastest player on the field, or definitely the fastest player on the field, alone, on the outside one-on-one coverage, man-to-man coverage. If you call that, they barely escaped. So I have my questions about the Raiders, and again, it's kind of like what I said about the Cardinals. I have my questions now because I watched last weekend's games and the week before that. They're kind of struggling now, and you're supposed to kind of hit your stride at this time, and their defense ain't playing well, but that's beside the point. Derek Carr is still a top 12 quarterback. No NFL quarterback has led more fourth-quarter comebacks than Derek Carr since the beginning of 2015. He has 19 of them. And this year, he's completing 68% of his passes, thrown for over 3,000 yards, thrown 22 touchdowns, only 5 picks, and has a 108 quarterback rating.
Yeah. Here's my thing with Derek Carr. If you look at his throwing motion, it looks really good. If you're talking about most pure passers in the NFL, he's probably top 5. He's got really good arm talent. for him, it always just comes down to what is he in terms of his playmaking ability? That's the question that has always come down to since he broke his leg. I feel like he's been I don't know. I don't think limited is the right word. I don't think he's gotten outside the pocket and made plays enough. And he's shown signs of getting back to that this season, which was really encouraging. And I thought maybe he was turning a corner. He was getting back to being himself after this injury. But he regressed these last couple of weeks, and I'm just wondering, like, what is he? You know?
Yeah, we'll talk about the Raiders a little bit over because we're going to pick their game this week, and it's a very important game, but we'll get to that later. You know, I think he's like second or third in turnovers over the past 5 weeks. He has some fumbles, some interceptions. But as I mentioned, I mean, if you were to just look at the stats, he's completing and I know stats are numbers, but they do matter. 68% of his passes, over 3,000 yards. He's on pace for over 4,000. 22 touchdowns to 5 picks. That's like I don't know, 4 something to 1, pretty much touchdown to interception ratio, and 108 quarterback rating. So if you just look at the stats, and you can talk about, you know, team performance and the turnovers and all that stuff the past couple games, but pretty much every quarterback goes through a stretch of games where they struggle a little bit. And, you know, if you watch the Raiders, you know, they've had problems on their offensive line with COVID, so he's not getting particularly the best protection. They've had to switch out some of the guys on the offensive line. He's not playing with his I guess he hasn't been playing with the normal starters on the offensive line. You know, the defense, he has to keep up with a defense that struggles. He plays in a division where you have, you got to face Justin Herbert, you got to face Patrick Mahomes, and, well, the Broncos are another story, but those two guys right there are pretty damn good, and they have pretty damn good offenses with pretty damn good weapons. So, you know, he gets overlooked a little because he plays in a division with Patrick Mahomes and this young stud in Justin Herbert. But if you just look at the stats and the fact that he's pretty darn clutch, he has more fourth quarter comebacks than anybody since the beginning of 2015. Then he's a top 12 quarterback. He doesn't win as much as he should, but that can be attributed to other things.
Right. And the bottom line is, just to close this out, I mean, if you go to most of the league, you ask them, would you take Derek Carr over your quarterback? I feel like most of them would say yes. So, I mean, I think that tells you all you need to know. I think most coaches would be thrilled to get a guy like Derek Carr on their team. So, like, I think, like, for example, if you put Derek Carr on the 49ers, I think they would have won that Super Bowl last year. That's just me, though.
It's possible. But Derek Carr, like, if you went to a lot of teams in the league right now and said, do you want like you mentioned, do you want Derek Carr? Will you take Derek Carr over your current quarterback? I think there's probably 10, 12, 15 teams that would. At least half the league would probably take Derek Carr over their current quarterback situation right now. But, you know, that can be a different debate for another day. Let's go to the next question.
All right. So, Owen McDade and Ute Mokink have questions about my Cowboys, right? So Owen writes in, he says, why are the Cowboys so bad? And Ute, my Dutch friend from the Bethany golf team, He says, "When will the Cowboys play good again?" I'm gonna address that question first. The follow-up question I would have is, do we want them to play good again, at least this season? I mean,
that question should be no.
Yeah, that's my take. So we have 3 wins right now. We're 2 games back in the division race. Our schedule's about to heat up again. I'm like, we can just, chill. And if we lose emphatically enough, maybe we can get that fat mother trucker, Mike McCarthy, out of the dang building. So that's a win-win. Okay, we can get a draft pick high, and we can get Mike McCarthy and Mike Nolan the heck out of there. And Kellen Moore, too. Get him out. Shoot. And the saddest thing is, I look on Cowboys Twitter, and everybody's blaming Andy Dalton. Everybody's saying all this bad stuff about him. Andy Dalton is what he is. We knew that he wasn't going to come in and carry this team. He is what he is. He's a system quarterback. If you give him no offensive line and you give him a trash defense, this is what happens. I mean, we saw this in Cincinnati. It's the same result. So why are the Cowboys so bad? Well, it's a mixture of, I guess, having no off season and switching schemes defensively. That's a big. I feel like that was a big part of it, as well as just the injuries have just completely decimated this team. I didn't think our team was that great to begin with, but I didn't think our team was deep, but now we really know our team isn't deep. With all of our big contracts throughout this up and down this roster, we're just not able to keep the quality backup players around. So I feel like this year really exposed that, and maybe now we can figure out what the future holds. We can just look towards the future and see what we can do.
Well, I'm not going to speak much about the Cowboys, just because you pretty much hit it on the head on all of it. But I will say that about the second question, when will the Cowboys play good again? Well, first of all, what are your standards for good? What does that mean? I know what a good football team looks like when I see it, but what would be good enough for you would be my follow-up question. And then the first question, why are they so bad? Well, I think like you said, it's a variety of things, and we could spend probably all day talking about the different things. We could make a whole separate podcast based on that, probably, or a whole nother episode.
And technically, I already did.
And technically, you already did. So there it is, right there. But I'm just going to give you a couple stats. And I know you probably don't want to be reminded of this, but just for our audience out here who may not, know and may like the Cowboys, because I know we have some followers who do support the Dallas Cowboys. They're giving up 168 rushing yards per game. That's the worst in the NFL. So they're terrible at stopping the run, which you have to be good at. To be a good team. If you look at the teams that are top 10 in stopping the run, and I could probably pull them up, but I'm not going to do it because we need to get moving with these questions. But if you look at those teams, I guarantee you 9 out of 10 of them right now are sitting in a playoff spot. So they can't stop the run, and if you can't stop the run, then you're going to struggle. That's going to open up the pass, and you're going to struggle to stop the pass. And if you look at it, right now, they've given up 393 points this year. That's the most in the NFL, and that's 35 more than the team that's given up the second most points in the league, the Detroit Lions, at 358.
Wow.
So, I'm not taking shots. These are just facts. So, I mean, you got to do the basic stuff right to be a winning football team in this league. And if you're getting gashed on the ground, then that's not a good start. So I had a big rant last year. At the beginning of the season last year with my Steelers, they couldn't, like, the beginning of the season, the Patriots gashed them, Seattle gashed them, and the 49ers gashed them on the ground. And they started to, the defense started to pick it up a little bit. They started to stop the run, and they went on a run. Even with Duck Hodges and Mason Rudolph at the quarterback position. Right now, you're stuck with Andy Dalton. He's made the playoffs. Right. He made the playoffs in Cincinnati. He took teams to the playoffs. He didn't win playoff games, but, he's a decent quarterback. I mean, he's a viable starter, viable backup for sure. I probably should just stop ranting at this point, but those are the facts. It all starts on the defensive side of the ball, in my opinion. The coaching, you definitely want to get rid of Mike Nolan. That experience obviously hasn't worked out. We can have an argument about McCarthy, just because, all the injuries. It's kind of unfair to judge it right now. This season with the COVID and all that stuff, it's far from a normal year, but the coaching has played a big role in this. But let's just move on.
Yeah. Yeah, the facts hurt, man. Oh, man, those stats are like daggers to the soul. Oh, okay. Moving on. So, my dad sent in a couple of questions. So, he says, who will be the best young QB in 3 years? And what will be your top 5 young QBs in 3 years? So, the answer to this question is simple. It's Patrick Mahomes. But I guess if you don't count him as young in 3 years, I guess he'd be a veteran by then because he's going to be in the playoffs every single year, presumably, barring injury. So I guess if you don't count him as young in 3 years, I'd look at a guy like Tua Tagovailoa. I really like what Miami is building down there with their defense. They're giving him a really good foundation to be extremely successful. And I think if you give Tua a good foundation, he's a guy who may have limited mobility a little bit. There's questions about that. But he's always been a guy who makes smart decisions in the pocket, and he's definitely not gonna lose you the game. And I think if you give a guy like that a good defense, you're gonna see a lot of success. I think if they go out and draft a running back, they get a couple of offensive linemen, I think they're gonna be Super Bowl contenders. Another guy I would look at. Hopefully, if he comes back from his injury, we'll see what happens with that. But Joe Burrow, the only question with that would be, can Cincinnati build something around him? But hopefully they'll get a decent guy from this draft with their pick, and they can build from there. But they have a foundation. They have a core offensively. That's the least you can say. You have T. Higgins. He developed great chemistry with Joe Burrow in just the few games that they played together. I think right there. You have the offense. You go out there and you build a defense, and you have something there. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this. Yeah.
The best young quarterback in 3 years. The tough part about this question, and you hit it right on the head, is a young quarterback, like, what is the criteria for a young quarterback? Is it under the age of 25? Like, can we say that? Like, do you have to play a certain amount of time in the NFL to be considered a young quarterback versus, like, a veteran? Like, what is... But I will say this. My top 3 in 3 years, and I'm not counting Patrick Mahomes, Deshaun Watson, because these are all seasoned veterans by then.
Right.
Some of these other guys, like even maybe Joe Burrow, because even though Joe Burrow's a rookie this year, he's 23 years old. And in 3 years, he'll still be on his rookie contract, but he'll be, like 26, 27? I mean, is he considered a young quarterback? Like,
right.
He's young relative to the amount of time he's been in the league, but he's not particularly young when you look at his age. The 3 guys I look at Kyler Murray.
Right.
I think he'll definitely be up there. I think what you said earlier when we were talking about the Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray debate, I think he definitely could win an MVP in the next 3 to 5 years. I think he'll definitely be up there. I look at the guy playing in Los Angeles, Justin Herbert. Big arm, very talented. That team has problems, and it's the coaching. But that's a totally different story for another day. Anthony Lynn needs to go. But once he can get a solid foundation, a solid coach, a solid foundation on that team, he has talent. I think he'll start winning more, and those statistics will matter more because he's putting up amazing numbers. And then the third guy, I'd have to think about it. I like the Tua idea. You mentioned it. He's a very smart quarterback, high football IQ. He's not going to lose you the game. I'll get into this later when we talk about the Miami-Kansas City game. But he's yet to turn the ball over. Yet to throw an interception.
Right.
In the first 5 games that he started this season, which is very impressive. And so I look at him, I'm trying to think, I don't know Josh Allen's age, but I look at him as a guy that could potentially, he's already in MVP conversations this year, has been, and he's playing his best football of his career so far right now. It's just a tough question. It's a fun question, and if we had more criteria, it'd be easier but you guys get the point. There's a group of like 5 or 6 guys that are in the conversation, and depending on your criteria, you can rank them how you want. But I'll just say this, the NFL is in great shape with the amount of, and who knows? I mean, the guys coming out this year, who knows? Trevor Lawrence could be top of that list. Justin Fields could be a hit. Even the guy from BYU, what's his name? Forgetting. BYU.
Zach Wilson? Zach Wilson?
Yes.
Right.
I mean, he's very talented. The guy from North Dakota State.
Trey Lance.
Looks pretty good. So,
right.
A lot of young quarterbacks to come in these coming drafts. So, it's hard to predict, but it's definitely a fun conversation.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's good for that question. Okay. The next question comes from an old friend of mine, longtime Spurs fan, just like you. I don't know if you remember Tyler from the locker room at UT. He worked there for a little while.
I do. I do.
I used to go up there and talk sports with him for like hours straight instead of working on my game. So, I mean, a lot of fun conversations with him there. But so his question is, or his discussion he wants us to have is talk about how the Spurs did on draft night, and talk a little bit about the Spurs draft history with being in the top 10. Their last 3 picks in the top 10 were, I believe, Tim Duncan, Sean Elliott, and who was the other one? David Robinson?
I believe so.
That's unbelievable.
So pretty good draft history, and even when they're not in the top 10, just outside the top 10, they have a tendency to find some pretty good players, a.k.a. Kawhi Leonard. So we'll just leave it there for the history. I think they had a very good draft. Not a great draft, a very good draft. I'd give it probably a B or a B+. With the 11th pick, they picked Devin Vassell, the wing from Florida State. I give that a B+. I think he fills 2 needs on this team: 3-point shooting and perimeter defense. Very lengthy defender. Probably the second or third best perimeter defender in this draft, behind the guy from Auburn. Blanking on his name right now.
Isaac Okoro.
Yes. He's right up there with him in terms of his perimeter defense, ability to guard multiple positions. It fills a need for the Spurs. And then 3-point shooting. In both years he was at Florida State, he shot over 41% from 3-point range, which is very good, and also fills a need for this. They need to get younger, more athletic, and they need more shooters. So Devin Vassell, very good pick. Doesn't necessarily fill a positional need. I think they have guys that are capable on the wing as of right now. But, I would have liked maybe a front court guy better, a center, one of the big guys better in terms of a positional fit. But, I think he probably was the best player available at that spot. So, no complaints. And then the second round, they got an experienced veteran from Duke. You could make an argument, possibly the most well-rounded point guard in this draft, and Trey Jones from Duke, played at Duke for a long time, under Coach K. Smart basketball IQ. You look at his stats last year at Duke: 16.2 points, 6.4 assists, and 2 steals per game. So very good on the perimeter defensively. You kind of see the identity this Spurs team is trying to build. DeJounte Murray, very good perimeter defender. Lonnie Walker, above average perimeter defender. Derek White, very good perimeter defender. Devin Vassell, Trey Jones. The list goes on and on. Experience, he's a leader. He was a leader at Duke, the leader of that team. Well-rounded. He's a below-average 3-point shooter as of now, but in each season he was at Duke, he improved his percentage. For the value they got at, 40-something? Right. I'd give this pick probably a B+, A-. So overall, I think they got 2 very good, very smart, high basketball IQ players that fill some needs on this team. I think they had a very good draft. Could have done a little bit better in terms of filling positional need, but I think they were just drafting based on the best player available and who they had as the best player available at each spot they were picking at. So yeah, given their draft history, even, finding guys like Derek White late, or Tony Parker late in the first round, they have a very, very good draft history, and that's the reason they had this run of 22 decades plus excellence up until this point where they're now a lottery team and trying to rebuild. So very good, not great, but yeah.
Yeah, you touched on everything there. But yeah, the Spurs they've been the model of excellence for so long, and I feel like the rest of the league, like, I feel like for a while, every team, like every year there was one guy from the Spurs front office that was getting promoted to GM somewhere, you know? So, or head coach or whatever it may be. So that just speaks to like how that organization is run, how they're able to reload their front office every year. Like that takes a lot of. I mean,
it's not only
that's a challenge.
It's not only the scouting department who has done overall over these past 2 decades, who've been able to do a fantastic job scouting these players and, you know, drafting them, but it's also a credit to the player development department. You know, they develop these guys in-house, and eventually they become valuable players to the team. Whether that's stashing them in Austin with the Austin Spurs in the G League for a couple of years and then bringing them up and slowly giving them playing time, or even drafting these guys from Europe and, you know, letting them play overseas for, you know, periods of time until they're ready to come over and help the actual organization. So it's a credit to the scouting department, the coaching staff, and the player development, whoever that may be. They've done a great job. Credit to them. It's a rebuilding phase now, but we'll get to that a little bit later when we talk about them and their over-under win totals for this season.
Yeah,
that's all I have to say.
All right, cool, man. Before we move on, though, shout out to you, Tyler, man. I really appreciate you watching the show, man. That's awesome. Hope you're doing good. Maybe we can see each other soon, man. Yeah. So, next question. This man's really clowning me on my own podcast. All right. So, the next question is from Hamanth, recent guest on the show. He asked, "Do you have a girlfriend?" And the answer is no. Okay, like it's simple. Like, no, I don't. Like,
the answer is no for me as well.
Yeah, I'm not gonna spend a whole lot of time on that. That's pretty self-explanatory. His second question was a really interesting one. Which NBA team has the potential to be a dynasty in the next 10 years? Well, there is a man down in Dallas, and he's a bad mofo, right? I mean, you know, he dabbles in the getting buckets thing, you know. He dabbles. But here's the thing, though. The health is the biggest concern. So, Luka and KP, really. Luka had the ankle problem early in the season. Like, I think December is when it happened. It was against the Heat. And then he was out for 2 weeks. And then, of course, KP, the whole year he was nursing he was slowly making his way back into being fully thrown into the starting lineup for every game, even back-to-backs. And then the torn meniscus happened in the playoffs for him, and that was on the other knee. So now you got the other knee having problems. So that's not good. He's 7'3", and I mean, like, leg injuries like that, they can derail a career, man. So that's the biggest concern there. But other teams, I think, could have dynasties in the next 10 years. I mean, I'm going to just throw the Lakers out there, right? I feel like, realistically, they could get 2 more of these titles, man. I with the way they're built, my question would be, are they going to be able to get enough young talent in the building and able to develop young guys? Because you're not going to be able to pay everybody, right? Like, Kuzma's going to want his bag soon. obviously you just re-signed KCP, but that's going to be the biggest question to me is how much young talent are you going to be able to bring into the building and develop in order to reload each year? Because you're not going to be able to just get veterans every single year that are the same quality like you did this year. So the Lakers, I feel like that's an obvious one. But it really just comes down to free agency, and I feel like that's unpredictable. So, but I'm gonna shift it over to you, man. I want to hear your thoughts.
What are your opinions on Denver?
I think their cap situation is interesting right now. They gave Jamal Murray that big contract, and at first it seemed like an overpay. That's just funny because now it feels like a bargain, you know. And obviously Jokic is already on the max. It really just comes down to Michael Porter Jr.
Right.
If he can be the true third guy, you can shuffle everybody else around. You know, if you got a big three that can build their chemistry together and get better and better over time, that's a great thing there. But I think they'll get tops one championship. I think when you look at the Western Conference, it's going to be really hard for them to get past some of these other teams. I think they can get one, but it would be really, really tough.
Well, I think it's interesting with Denver, and you make some very good points. I just wanted to get your thoughts because, I mean, if Michael Porter Jr. turns into an all-star, and then you have continues to develop into what he could be, grow into his potential, and you have Jokic and Jamal Murray. I mean, but the West is the problem, right? It's not necessarily Denver. It's you got to get through the gauntlet of the West. And if we're talking about teams that can actually get over the hump, because that's what you have to do to actually create a dynasty. I like what you said about the Lakers. As long as LeBron's playing and he's showing no signs of slowing down anytime soon, they're going to be right up there. As long as they can get, like you said, enough talent, not just young, but just enough talent to surround AD and LeBron. Dallas is very interesting. Luka is a bad man. And, with Kristaps, hopefully he can return fully healthy sometime soon. And then, who knows if that man in Milwaukee doesn't sign a max extension with the Bucks.
Look out.
What happens? I mean, that's a automatic dynasty if he ends up in Dallas, but that's a different story for another day. We didn't really mention any teams in the East. I'm trying to think.
What do you think of Atlanta's future?
I have my questions.
Right, I do too.
I'm not sure. I think we talked about this in our last episode. I'm not sure what they're going to do with John Collins. I think he's a big part of this equation. We all like Trae Young. I think they... There's still a couple... I don't know. I really don't know. Okay, I have questions about a lot of their young players.
Right. Here's my thing. Okay, so if Cam Reddish becomes an all-star, I think that changes everything. But that's a stretch. He really struggled his rookie season. But, we've seen guys struggle their rookie season and become fantastic. I think if he develops, I think his ceiling is like a Jimmy Butler type of player. And if you add that to what Trae Young can bring you in the backcourt, that's extremely dynamic. And that could be that's very interesting, you know. So
it is interesting, but then again, that's a big question.
Yeah, yes, it is. It's hypothetical for sure.
Yeah. This, I don't know. I didn't give a lot of thought to this question, to be honest with you.
How about New Orleans?
New Orleans is interesting. If Zion continues to improve, Brandon Ingram continues to ascend, they have a lot of talent down there that could potentially make a run 2 to 3 years down the road. I really like that team.
I do too. I question. Okay, so one, their spacing. Brandon Ingram is a good shooter now. I think we can say that pretty confidently. They still have JJ Redick. Lonzo Ball, is he going to remain consistent? Is he going to come back and is he going to improve? Can he be that, I guess, third guy, I guess? I don't know. I don't know if you really can say that, but it's tough. I struggle to believe that they can bring in free agents to New Orleans. That'd be a tough thing for me to see realistically.
Hard to get free agents there, but yes, they're an interesting team, but dynasty, we have to see about that.
We have to wait and see how that Drew Holiday trade works out, because they got a lot of picks from that, and they could possibly work a trade and trade for a star, and who knows? And then they're in business. They could go trade for a point guard. Like, for example, what if Portland crashes and burns, and all of a sudden Damian Lillard is on the open market, and they go trading? They trade the house for Damian Lillard, and they get Damian Lillard, and they got that big three. Then, boom, contender.
Lillard, Ingram, and Zion. Oof.
That would be nasty.
The biggest question with that trio is health.
Right.
But that's, this is all hypothetical. So.
Right. That was just a random thought that popped in my head. But okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Next question. I'll let you do this one. This is from your cousin. So.
So my cousin, big Seahawks fan, he just wants to know what is the fate of the Seattle Seahawks this season. And we talked about this a little bit. When was our last episode? Last Saturday.
Right.
Yeah. This was the day before. They looked absolutely awful at home against the New York Giants. But, that's a different story for another day. I think Seattle has the potential, if we're talking about their ceiling, potential Super Bowl, but I think their ultimate fate is probably going to be a loss in the NFC Championship or maybe in the divisional round. It's going to all depend on matchups. Like, that's what we always say in the playoffs. We don't know who they're going to play. We think we know where the game's going to be played. But right now, the NFC goes through New Orleans. And as we know, that's a fast track. And if your defense struggles to stop people, I see a potential loss in the NFC Championship game in y'all's future. And the way that Russell Wilson is struggling right now, the way that offensive line was just absolutely dominated by a more physical, better prepared New York Giants team. They're a very good, flawed football team. Right now, realistically, and again, it depends on matchups, I'd say losing the NFC Championship game.
Right. I'm with you there. I think Russell Wilson is going to get his mojo back. I'm not concerned with that. I think it comes down to, you're right, matchups, and also can they just stay healthy? You know, can they be healthy at the right time? If you look last year, they didn't have a running back in that divisional playoff game with Green Bay, yet they still almost won. So with this team, I think you have some playmakers defensively. You have something there, and I think if they can just be opportunistic and just get a turnover every once in a while, you don't have to like be world beaters or anything like that. I think they can just, if they can just bend but not break and just get a turnover here or there, I think this offense can do enough to get them to a Super Bowl. But I think the Saints would be a tough matchup for them. That would be an interesting one because I think Kamara would be a problem coming out of the backfield. And shoot, this is a tough question. I think NFC Championship. That's my answer.
You make a really good point. I want to re-clarify. I think Russell Wilson, I mean, you don't want to face him in the playoffs. We all know his track record. We all know he's going to get back to playing at a really high level, maybe MVP caliber level by the time the playoffs roll around in about a month. But again, you don't have to be the Purple People Eaters to get to the Super Bowl. You don't have to be the 1970s Steelers, Steel Curtain, to win the playoffs and win the Super Bowl. You don't have to be the,
85 Bears.
85 Bears. You know, you just got to be able to make plays at the opportunistic times. When the plays are there to be made, and I know it sounds cliche, you got to make them. And I think it's going to come down to, if you want to get into the real X's and O's of it, it's going to be their pass rush. Can they generate any sort of pass rush? I think the addition of Carlos Dunlap has helped in that department. But, again, you can't. They sort of have this tendency to get out physical by physical football teams. I mean, you saw what happened in the first LA Rams matchup. The Rams ran all over them. And Jared Goff was able to get into his play action. You saw what happened last week against the Giants. I mean, the Giants ran all over them. And they were the more physical football team. They won in the trenches. If you're going to pull that crap against New Orleans, you're going to get run off the field. Especially with that defensive line and that defense. Right. So, it just all comes down to what's their level of physicality, what's their health, and I guess what I mentioned is, can they make the plays when they're there to be made?
Right. Okay. So moving on to our last, I guess, person to send in a question. He sent in 3 questions. So, let's cover the football ones first. So he says, who's more likely to get the last spot in the NFC, Vikings or Cardinals?
Well, it's a tough question because I think part of this is you have to look at the remaining schedules and see who they play and who they match up with and what games they could potentially win and potentially lose down the stretch. But I know we picked Arizona last weekend, and I think as of now, I think I have to stick with them just by a hair. But if you look at Minnesota, their ability to run with Dalvin Cook, their ability, Kirk Cousins, been there, done that. He got over the hump last year, beat New Orleans in the playoff game. He's now a seasoned veteran, whereas Kyler Murray hasn't really played much December football. You know, when the weather changes, when the game gets physical, the styles change, the games matter more. Kirk Cousins has been there. He's a seasoned veteran. Kyler Murray hasn't. And also the fact that Arizona's defense is really struggling right now. They're giving up a lot of yards on the ground. And in the past couple weeks, they've just gotten worse and worse. So I have to look at the schedules. Right now I'm going to remain on the Arizona train. But this weekend is going to be really telling. If the Cardinals get out physical and beaten down by the Giants, then it's going to be a different story come Monday. Because if you look at the Vikings matchup with the Buccaneers are coming off a bye. That's when Tom Brady plays his best. We all know this. But that Minnesota defense is playing well. They're turning people over. Kirk Cousins is playing well. Justin Jefferson is making a push, an argument for Offensive Rookie of the Year. They have Adam Thielen, Dalvin Cook in that running game. I mean, if they come out this weekend and either play Tampa Bay close and look competitive, or even pull off the upset, we're going to have a different conversation come Monday.
Right, because then you look at Tampa Bay going, are they going to miss the playoffs? You know, so
I mean, it's possible.
Right. This is really tough. Because you look at Arizona, and they're kind of reeling. And these are two teams that are kind of going in two different directions right now. Where Arizona started off season well, and now they're kind of falling back a little bit. And then Minnesota is surging a little bit right now. They're finding their identity.
We'll know the answer to this question after this weekend.
Right.
As I said, if Arizona comes out and looks like they have the past couple weeks, and they lose this football game to the New York Giants on the road, then I think this is the season-defining game. This is it. I'm not going to say you have no shot if you lose this game. Obviously, you do, because we had you making the playoffs at 9-7, and you could still win your last 3 games and slide into that wild card spot. But at this point, it's kind of too late. I mean, you are what you are right now as a football team, and it's hard to make adjustments, especially for a young coach like Cliff Kingsbury. It's not a shot at him, but right now, you are what you are, and you got to play with what you have. And it's going to be really tough, not only physically if they get beaten down by this Giants football team like the Giants were able to do last week against Seattle, but on their psyches. Like, you should have lost. I mean, if you lose this weekend, you should be on a 6-game losing streak. Should be. So, and Minnesota is just, they seem to be playing better and better football each week. And I haven't watched all their games, but it seems to me that, they're a better, more physical football team right now.
Shoot, man, I'm gonna go out on a limb and say Minnesota will make it. Momentum matters when it comes down to the NFL season. The season is a marathon, not a sprint. So once you start reeling a little bit, we see teams all the time. They start the season 6-2, and then they finished the season 6-10. We saw that with the Panthers like 2 years ago, right? So,
Right.
I mean, we've seen this story before.
Many times.
I got to go with the more experienced team, man. I think all signs are pointing that direction, and I think I'd rather see the Cardinals in the playoffs because they're a fun team and we this is something new. But despite what I want, I think if I'm making an unbiased pick, man, I think I gotta pick the Vikings.
I'm gonna give it one more week, but I'm starting to lean more towards the Vikings. And if you're a knowledgeable football fan and you watch these games, I don't know how you couldn't lean more towards the Vikings at this point.
Right. So we're going to get into this second football question he had for us. He says, A-Rod or Mahomes for MVP? Man, I think this is Mahomes' MVP. If you look at what he's done, man, if you don't give him this MVP, I feel like you get into this like weird narrative wasteland where like you like didn't give it to him because you're like tired of how good he is and blah blah blah. Like
Right.
it's like the LeBron thing, right?
Right.
It's that narrative wasteland where he's the best player in the world, but it's like voter fatigue where you just don't. Yeah, and he's like, I don't really feel like it. But give this man his roses while he's here, man. He's in his prime and he's just balling. Okay, like he's like, I don't think we're gonna see an offense like this ever again. And he's the driving force of it. And I think we gotta give him his appreciation.
Again, Aaron Rodgers, he's a bad man, as Stephen A. Smith once said or has said many times in the past.
Trust me, the Cowboys know all about that.
And he's been fantastic. And the Packers seem to be getting better now, which is fairly surprising because I thought a couple weeks ago that once it came December, and, I still have my sort of questions about this, about their level of physicality, their level of finesse, how much of a finesse football team are they really, and can they win when they match up against a more physical football team. But right now, Patrick Mahomes is just, he's on another universe. I mean, if you don't give him the MVP, it's like, what are you doing?
Right.
Do you watch these games? I mean, take Patrick Mahomes off the Kansas City Chiefs. What are they?
They're an 8-8 football team. I mean,
Okay.
but they're 15-1. Well, no, not 15-1. They're whatever they are, 10-1, 11-1. But yeah.
So we're talking about the difference between an 8-8 football team and, in many of the media's eyes, a heavy favorite for the Super Bowl. I mean, look at the stats. Look at what he's done. He's already won a Super Bowl MVP. He's already won a regular season MVP. He's already won the damn Super Bowl. And he's in, his third year as a starter, fourth year as a starter.
This is third year as a starter, man. He's barely...
Third year as a starter. And he's already done all this. He's already thrown for more than 50 touchdowns in a season. He had the best touchdown-interception ratio, I believe, last season when he played. He had that injury. It's just like, at this point, it's unfair.
Yeah.
saw a couple weeks ago against the Raiders. The Raiders scored. He had, like a minute or so, and he made it look easy. I mean, he drove down the field, threw it to Kelsey in the end zone. The Chiefs win the game, blah, blah, blah. Like, they've played a lot of close games lately, and if it's not for Mahomes, they lose a lot of these games. They lose probably all of them. How do you not give it to the best player in the world? Already first ballot Hall of Famer if he never wins another Super Bowl, based on just the statistical outlook. All due respect to Aaron Rodgers, in any other world, he gets this award this season, but I think it's like something 33 touchdowns and 2 picks with Patrick Mahomes. It's just, and both those picks came against the same team. You can make the argument one of those picks wasn't even his fault. It's pretty clear and obvious in that Raiders game that the receiver was in the wrong spot. But we're getting into all the extra fluff that we don't really need to at this point.
Yeah.
Mahomes.
Right.
Mahomes.
Yeah.
Period.
Exactly. Right. Okay. So his third question. Here's an interesting one. We touched on this earlier. Can anyone beat the Lakers, barring injury? So, I think basically what he's saying is, if the Lakers stay healthy, assuming they stay healthy, can anyone beat them? I think the answer is yes, but I think it's going to take a lot. Here's the thing. So, I think I question what Marc Gasol is at this point in his career a little bit. We saw him degress a little bit his last year in Toronto. I question that a little bit, and even in the 2019 playoffs, he struggled a little bit. So I question that a little bit. I said a little bit like 5 times, but Montrezl Harrell as well. He's your backup center, and he's struggled on the defensive end in the playoffs. That was well documented. But who's your third center? Right, that you let go of JaVale McGee for nothing, and you don't have Dwight Howard anymore. So, who's your third guy? I mean, Marc Gasol at this point in his career, do you really want to rely on him to be your lockdown defender? I mean, is he even that anymore? Can you even consider him that? I guess really you're gonna have AD at the 5, but of course he doesn't want to play that position for some reason. So I think that's a big question there that nobody's talking about. But the funny thing is, that's really the only hole I can think of on this roster. I mean, this roster is stacked up and down.
Can anyone beat the Lakers? Yes. But if the Lakers stay healthy, is it very likely that happens?
No.
Probably not. No. I get where you're coming from, but, I mean, this is LeBron James and Anthony Davis.
Yeah.
Who gives a crap about, one little tiny hole? I mean, a guy, Colin Cowherd, who I respect a lot in terms of some of his opinions, but also, I don't know. Forget it. But the point is, he brought this up this week on one of his shows. I don't actually watch a show. I just watch some of his YouTube clips because he makes a lot of very good points. The ESPN.com came out with a list, and they do this every year, of the top 100 players in the NBA, ranked. And this year they had LeBron James and Anthony Davis 1 and 2. Now you can make the arguments for how you want to rank them, but the point he was trying to make is, and he's a big LeBron fan, like pretty much everyone, he says that LeBron is the best player in the world, and he thinks that even at the age of, 36 or 36? Is he 35?
36, I think. Right.
36 in his 18th season, he thinks he's the best player in the world, and the gap between number 1 and number 2 is getting bigger and bigger. If you look at LeBron, let's just go through the categories. Teammate, he's an A. What do you want to say? Leadership, A.
Athleticism, A.
Athleticism, A. Anything, every category, he checks the box. So I don't know if you agree with that, but if you have the best player in the world and Anthony Davis in the playoffs, who beats you in a 7-game series? If you're healthy. You add Dennis Schroeder, you add Wesley Matthews, you add Montrezl Harrell, you add all these pieces, and hopefully Kyle Kuzma can do something worth a shit in the playoffs too. If he does that, then and you bring back KCP, who can beat LeBron and AD 4 times? That's my question.
Yeah.
The answer to the question is nobody. Based on, unless the Clippers can figure out some sort of chemistry.
Right. But I don't know if they will, though. It's the thing. It's just so funny because we talk about how the West has become so much better. It's deeper this year, and teams like mid-tier teams have hopped a tier and become better. But the elephant in the room is the Lakers are still a tier above the rest. And that's just the reality of it, I'm a wishful thinker, and I'd like to believe that the Mavericks are somewhere in the fold and they'd be able to compete if something came down to something. But the reality is, there's nobody in the NBA who can even slow down this duo. It's just not going to happen. It's just not going to happen.
I have a couple of questions, and I want to maybe modify what we're going to do here. We were planning on recording this podcast evening of Friday, right? December 11th, but we're actually recording it 2 a.m. on a Saturday. In case y'all don't know. So we have a lot to get to. I don't know what time we're at on the timer right now. But what are we at?
We're at hour 30. We're almost hour and 30. So
okay. Yeah. So I'm thinking that, and I don't know what you want to, I don't know if maybe you disagree, but since the NFL games are on Sunday and the NBA season still doesn't start for another 2 weeks. I know preseason started tonight. I didn't watch any of the games, but do you think we should just stick it out and make this a super long podcast? Because I know the Western Conference talk is going to take a long time. Or do you just want to pick these 6 games against the spread? We could make it relatively quick, probably 30 minutes, make this a 2-hour podcast like last time, and then just make a totally separate pod for the Western Conference.
I think we should do that. That's what I was thinking, but I didn't know like what we would do. Like I was thinking like, wow, these questions are taking a lot more time than we thought originally.
But
so
we said this at the beginning of the pod. Thank you guys so much for sending in those questions. That was an awesome segment. Probably one of our best segments ever on this podcast. A lot of good questions, a lot of funny questions. As you saw at the beginning, we went really in depth, I think, on all of those, even the funny ones. Maybe more in depth than we probably should have for the sake of this content. But thank you so much for everyone who sent in questions. Hopefully we'll do this more in the future. We just wanted to do something a little bit different and try something out, do something special, since this is a milestone in this podcast illustrious history.
Right.
I guess you could say.
All right.
So don't worry, guys. We're going to get to it all. We're just we're trying to have a little bit more fun on this podcast, show a little bit more personality. I think that showed in those questions. And it's just taking us a little bit longer now since there's so much stuff to talk about. We're going to get to the NBA, and we're going to get super in-depth with the NBA, no question, in due time before the season starts. But for the sake of time and the sake of time, because it's 2 a.m., we're just going to finish out with these picks since they're more urgent. I picked 6 games. The best 6 games, in my opinion, this weekend for NFL. We have the Arizona Giants at... I just said the Arizona Giants. Wow. See, it's starting to wear on us a little bit.
Yeah.
It's 2 a.m.
Yeah.
The Arizona Cardinals at the New York Giants. We have the Kansas City Chiefs at the Miami Dolphins. The Indianapolis Colts at the Las Vegas Raiders. Very interesting game. Very important game for playoff seeding. New Orleans Saints at the Philadelphia Eagles, who are no longer starting that guy named Carson Wentz. The Pittsburgh Steelers this is why we want to speed it up a little. We're getting some yawns. We're getting some mess ups in the naming of teams. So we're just going to speed this up a little bit. Pittsburgh Steelers at the Buffalo Bills and the Baltimore Ravens at the Cleveland Browns.
All right. Rapid fire. Let's go. Let's get it. Okay.
I'll start it. Arizona Cardinals at New York Giants. The spread is Cardinals are favored -2.5. I'm taking the Giants to cover the spread +2.5 and win outright as slight underdogs. Over the 4-game winning streak, the Giants have only given up 16.5 points per game, meaning they're number 1 in scoring defense over the past 4 games. You look at it in the first 8 games, they were -5 in turnover differential. Over the 4-game winning streak, they're actually +8, so they went from -5 to +8, and they're averaging 119.8 rushing yards per game over this span. That's 11th in the NFL, and 6 out of the last 7 games, they've rushed for at least 132 yards. So they're being physical, they're not giving up a lot of points, and they're not turning the ball over, and they're forcing turnovers. That's a winning formula this time of year. The Cardinals are struggling. We went into depth about this when we got into those questions. I'm taking the Giants to cover the spread and win outright as slight underdogs at home against the Arizona Cardinals.
And I'm with you there. I'm taking the Giants as well to win this game. The Cardinals' weaknesses are the exact opposite of the Giants' strengths. The Cardinals' weaknesses all year has been in the trenches, offensive line, defensive line, right? So Giants are going to go into this game. They're going to control the line of scrimmage. They're at home. They're rolling as a team overall right now, and they're just gonna. I feel like they're just gonna pound the football. I think Colt McCoy. If there's an over under in passing attempts, I think it's going to be If there's a line, it'd probably be like 16. I'd take the under. I think they're going to just pound the football the whole game.
So I agree. We'll move on. Kansas City Chiefs minus 7.5 point favorites at the 8-4 Miami Dolphins, who are fighting for a wild card spot at this point. I'm going to take the Dolphins to lose close and cover the spread plus 7.5. If you look at the Chiefs over the last 4 games, they've played a lot of close games. None have been decided by more than 6 points, even though they've won all of them. I look at a Dolphins defense that has just been playing out dominant over the past 6 or 7 games. They're very good on third downs. They get off the field. I think they can get Mahomes off the field and get the ball to their offense for more opportunities. They only allow 32% of opponent third down conversions. That's best in the league. They also only allow 17.7 points per game. That is second fewest in the NFL, only behind the Pittsburgh Steelers. And over their last 8 games, they have the same record as the Kansas City Chiefs at 7-1. And then lastly, we talked about Tua earlier in the young quarterback conversation, a question which your dad posed, which was a very good one. In 5 games, he's 4-1, completing 63% of his passes, 7 touchdowns, no picks, so he's not turning the ball over, and he has a 99 quarterback rating. So I think you have a formula down there in Miami where even if you don't win the game, you can keep it close. So what do you think?
Right. I think the Chiefs will win this game. I think they'll cover, but I think they'll cover on like a late touchdown where they extend their lead to maybe 10 or something like that. I think this will be a close game. If you look at Miami's defense, I think their defense is built for this game specifically, compared to a lot of other defenses. If you look at what they did in the offseason, they went out their main moves. They basically fortified the cornerback position like intensely. Like they went cornerback in the draft, in free agency, everything. So if there's any team that's gonna be able to maybe be physical with these wide receivers, it's this one. So I think they'll keep it close for most of the game. I think the Chiefs extend their lead over the spread late, and probably piss off a lot of bettors. But yeah, let's move on here. Next game, Colts at Las Vegas Raiders. Colts are favored minus 2.5. Shoot, man, I'm gonna pick the Colts.
I am too. I'm picking the Colts to win and cover. The Raiders are losing the battle in the trenches the past 3 weeks. Derek Carr has been sacked 5 times the past 2 games against the Falcons and the Jets, both of which rank in the bottom 5 in sack percentage, so not good. Offensive line play hasn't been good. They barely beat the Jets. The Colts are getting healthy on defense. They're getting linebacker Bobby Okereke back and safety Kari Williams back from injury this week. They got who they get back last week?
DeForest Buckner.
Yes.
Right, and their other linebacker, I forgot his name.
And yes, so they're getting healthy on defense. That's the strength of this football team. I think they can be able to dominate the trenches. This is a very important game for playoff seeding. Who's going to get that number 7 seed? So I just like the Colts are trending in an upward direction. The Raiders are kind of slumping here the past couple weeks. So we'll make that quick. Do you have anything to add?
If you look at the Raiders, they struggle rushing the passer. And if you look at where the Colts are strongest offensively, it's their offensive line. So I think they'll protect Phillip Rivers. And I think maybe they'll be able to get more opportunities down the field than they would in other games where there's elite pass rushers and then he's not mobile. So I think I think they'll win this game pretty handedly. I think this is a good matchup for them.
I do too. And it would be a big win for them in terms of the AFC playoff picture. Okay,
Right,
the New
exactly.
Orleans Saints, the number 1 seed currently in the NFC, taking on the Philadelphia Eagles in Philadelphia as 7.5-point favorites. I'm picking the Saints to win and cover. We're talking about this dominant defense against a rookie quarterback. They are second in total yards allowed. They're second in rushing yards allowed and fourth in passing yards allowed. I think they're the first overall defense, just in terms of defensive efficiency. I think Jalen Hurts will make some good plays. I think Philly could potentially keep it close for maybe like the first half or so. But I think this New Orleans football team is just too good.
Right. I agree. I think Philly's going to come out. They're going to show some fight. Jalen Hurts is going to bring the juice offensively that this team hasn't had. And I think their defense is really going to show to be really good this game. If there's for the over-under, I'm not sure what the line is there, but I would take the under for this game. I think this is going to be a low-scoring game. And I think the Saints will pull away late. Do they have Drew Brees back for this game?
They do not. It is Taysom Hill.
Oh, wow. Okay. Shoot. Okay. That changes everything for me. I think, okay, I still have the Saints winning, but I'm going to pick the Eagles to cover. I think the Eagles still believe they can make the playoffs. And they still have the remnants of their championship team. Like they're still like the pieces are still there. They still have that really good pass rush. Their secondary is okay. And I think if they can put together a good defensive game, they could possibly win this game. This is an interesting game.
Just because of the quarterback matchup. I think Jalen Hurts has a chance. Based on what I saw last week, I would not be surprised when he came into the game against Green Bay. That game was pretty much out of reach until they put Jalen Hurts in the game, and they scored two touchdowns and made it a game there late before Green Bay, and Aaron Jones scored a late touchdown to basically put the game away. They made it a game with Jalen Hurts in there. I think they could do that again against the Saints. I just think, if you look at it, the past 7 games without Drew Brees, they're 7-0 against the spread. They're Sean Payton versus Doug Peterson, I think, is kind of a coaching mismatch. And this defense is showing no signs of slowing down. So I wouldn't be surprised, but, we can argue about this all day. Let's just move on.
Right.
I think this is the game of the weekend, but I might be biased. Pittsburgh Steelers at the Buffalo Bills. Buffalo comes in as a 2.5-point favorite over the 11-win Pittsburgh Steelers. I hope I'm wrong, but I'm picking Buffalo to win and cover the spread. 2.5 at home against the Steelers. Here's what I'll say about Pittsburgh, and this is all you need to know. They become too reliant on Big Ben. And that's a bad thing if you look at the history of the Steelers with Big Ben Roethlisberger. When Ben Roethlisberger, in his career, throws 40 or more passes in a game, okay, which he's done each of the last 5 games. In each of the last 5 games, he's thrown 40 or more passes, and in some cases, 50 or more passes in some of these games because Pittsburgh can't run the ball. When he does that in his career, throws 40 or more passes, the Steelers are 51-48, barely over a 500 football team. A 52% winning percentage. They're a mediocre football team when Ben throws over 40 passes, basically is what that's telling you. When he throws under 40 passes, though, Pittsburgh, 104-24. When he goes under that number, they win 80% of their games. Basically, they're the Patriots when Ben doesn't have to throw the ball a ton. And right now, he's having to throw the ball a ton because their run game is non-existent. Last week against the Redskins, they had 14 carries for a very fantastic 21 yards. So I think this has the potential to get kind of ugly. The injuries are piling up on the Steelers' defense, and that's really the strength of this football team right now. Joe Hayden has a concussion. We know Devin Bush and Bud Dupree have gone down now and are out for the season. But even their replacements, Robert Spillane and Vince Williams, are going to be out for this game. So there's a huge question at middle linebacker. They did trade for that Avery Williamson guy against the Jets. From the Jets, he was actually one of the Jets' decent players, but I'm not sure if he really is gonna be the quarterback, really capable of being the quarterback of this defense. The hope is T.J. Watt can have a monster game and kind of solidify his case for Defensive Player of the Year, and that Alex Highsmith, the rookie, can create some pressure on Josh Allen, and maybe Minka can create a couple splash plays, turnovers, whatever it may be. But the injuries are starting to pile up. They're not running the football well. They're being too reliant on Big Ben, even though he's still a very good quarterback at this point in his career, considering the circumstances coming off the elbow injury. You just can't. It's not a winning formula this time of year to throw the ball 45, 53, 55 times a game. Like, just not going to work. Not going to cut it. And by the way, the Bills right now rank first in both third down conversion rate and fourth down conversion rate. So if Pittsburgh's going to end up keeping this game close, it's going to come down to whether or not they can get the Bills off the field on those third downs and fourth downs, if it comes to that. But a little long-winded since I'm a Steelers fan, but I just laid it out for you. When Roethlisberger throws 40 or more passes in his career, he's a 500. He has a 500 record, basically. When he doesn't, when he throws less than that, he wins 75, 80% of his games. That is what it is.
I originally was going to pick the Steelers, but I think you actually changed my mind. I actually didn't know that Devin Bush went down. I thought they still had him. But I thought with James Conner coming back that they could get the running game back going. But now that I'm thinking about it, I think the Bills are they're rolling right now. They've other than that Cardinals game where they lost on a miracle Hail Mary, I think they would have won 6 games in a row now if they won that game.
Josh Allen's playing the best football of his young career so far.
Right, and I think this could be a statement win for them. This could be
I think
his coming out party.
Here's what I'll say as a Steelers fan. I think there is such thing as a good loss here for Pittsburgh. If you can come out, create some sort of running game,
right?
Like rush for, let's say, more than 50 yards. Like take a step in the right direction.
Right.
Like 20 rushing attempts, over 50 yards. You have some semblance of a competitive running game. The receivers can catch the balls when they're thrown to them. That's been a big problem as of late. They lead the NFL in drop passes. As talented as they are, they do drop a lot of passes. That's played a part into this struggling offense the past couple weeks. If you can just play sound football, but it's just not enough because your injuries are too much to overcome on the defensive side of the ball. And Buffalo is just a very, very hot football team as of right now. And you're playing at their place instead of in Pittsburgh. Listen, I'd be happy. If we can create a running game and play sound football, but it's just not enough, fine. I'm fine with that. But if they pull the same shit they've been pulling the past couple weeks, it's going to become a question, like, can this team even win a playoff game? Like,
yeah,
that's going to become a big question.
Yeah,
all right,
here's my thing with the drops, though. I think it had more to do with fatigue and their COVID situation with the last few games.
That is true. That's something that does have an effect on not only the play, the short amount of time they had to prepare for Washington after a Wednesday, after the circumstances with COVID, their schedule getting messed up like 3 or 4 times, not knowing when they were going to play. That's definitely had an effect on, I guess, their level of play, but also this team's, I guess, health right now. There's a lot of guys
and y'all would have had your bye week at some point, this point late in the season.
Yeah, exactly. So, I don't know. I'm hoping that if we lose, I'm talking about the Steelers, if we lose, I'm hoping we can show that you have made an effort at least to run the football. Like, give James Conner 20 touches this game. Right. No matter how many yards he gets, just make an effort to keep Bill's defense honest. Don't come out and throw 40 or 50 passes. It's just not going to work that way. All right. Moving on. Not going to rant there. Big game in the division. Maybe the biggest game in 15, 20 years for the Cleveland Browns. Hosting the Baltimore Ravens on Monday Night Football. And look at this. The Browns now, with the Steelers' loss last week to the Redskins, football team, my bad. The Browns are only 2 games back. They're 9-3. Pittsburgh's 11-1. If Pittsburgh loses on Monday night, now you're only basically a game and a half back because Pittsburgh did beat down Cleveland in the first matchup, but they do have another matchup coming up the last week of the season, which should be interesting. So they're in a chase for the division crown, and they're hosting the Baltimore Ravens. Baltimore is a 2.5-point favorite despite Cleveland's performance last week, which we predicted on this very podcast last weekend.
Shout out to us.
I'm actually, and maybe this is because I'm rooting for Baltimore in this game. I don't do this very often, but I'm rooting for Baltimore, and sometimes, it just gets in the way. Because Pittsburgh needs Cleveland to lose if they don't want to lose hold on this division. But yes, I do think that Baltimore is going to win and cover. And the reason is the Browns, yes, they may be 9-3, but they actually have a minus 15-point differential through their first 12 games, despite the fact that they're 9-3. That's the worst by any team with at least 9 wins through 12 games in NFL history. Impressive win against the Titans, but the Titans, they have no pass rush. And when you give Baker a clean pocket with all those weapons, that's what you get. I think Baltimore and the defensive coordinator, I should know his name, but I don't. I'm blanking on it right now because it's 2:30 in the morning.
I think his name is Dennis Allen or something.
Something like that.
Yeah.
But anyways, when you give Baker a clean pocket, that's what he looks like. If you give him the weapons, you give him a clean pocket, you give him what he needs, he can do that to you. And you don't create any pass rush. But, when he went against Pittsburgh, what happened? He got sacked a bunch of times and, threw a couple interceptions, one of them a pick six. When he went against Baltimore way earlier in the season, And in 5 games against Baltimore in his career, he's 2-3, so not terrible. But he's only completing 57% of his passes, 8 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, and only an 80 quarterback rating. So, And, this is the division rivalry late in the football season. So, you're not throwing any surprises at Baltimore this game like you did Tennessee last weekend.
Right.
Both these teams know each other inside and out. It's going to be a very interesting game. I'm hoping Baltimore wins, and maybe that played into my prediction. But, hell, Cleveland, there's a strong possibility. Why are you laughing at?
I'm just thinking about what I'm about to say. I'm about to drop a bomb on you, man.
But, look, Cleveland is, this is the biggest game they've had in 10, 15 years.
More like 20. Maybe even 25.
Whatever you want to say.
This is wild. But, hey, Cleveland, this is for you, okay? All right? I'm a believer, okay? I'm a believer, all right? And you know what? 3 weeks ago, I would not have made this pick. But I watched, I have NFL Game Pass. And I bought it, accidentally. I bought it thinking that I could watch all the games live. But apparently, I could only watch replays of them. So, yeah, I can only watch them after the fact. So I went back and watched the last 3 Browns games, right? Baker Mayfield, he's playing a lot better. And okay. I watched that entire Titans game, right? That was the best game of his career. So he and this is just eye test, right? He's had games before where he put up numbers, right? He's had those games before. We've talked about this on the pod. But he didn't just put up numbers against the Titans. He shredded them. He dotted them up the whole game. So I think this scheme, whatever Kevin Stefanski is doing, whatever he's cooking up down there with Baker, no pun intended. I think it's really he's really starting to buy in, and I think the play action game, I think he's found his niche in the NFL. I think they finally found what he's best at, and I think it's going to show in this game. Here's what I'm going to say about the Ravens. I still question what they are offensively. I don't think they fixed anything against the Cowboys last week. I think they just played a trash team, and I guess it's yet to be seen, but I still have questions. I think you could see Myles Garrett have a big game. They lost their left tackle, so I think you could see Myles Garrett have a big game in that department. I think it'll be a close game. I think it's not as simple as I think the Browns will win by a lot, because I obviously don't think that'll happen. I think obviously the Baltimore defense is still formidable. They're still really, really good. And they'll get to Baker Mayfield a few times. They might even force a turnover or two. But I think this scheme Cleveland is having right now, it's really working. I think this Cleveland offensive line is better than what they were at the beginning of the year. And I think Baker Mayfield's mechanics are better than what they were at the beginning of the year.
All good points. I just think that when it comes down to it, okay, you beat Tennessee, right?
Mm-hmm.
You beat them pretty good. The final score didn't tell the story of the game, right?
Mm-hmm.
Tennessee does that to a lot of teams. Pittsburgh got up big, and they made a run in the second half, and Cleveland got up big. They made a run. That's just what Tennessee does. But it's tough. I just want to see Cleveland do it again. Like,
right.
You haven't been in this position in quite a long time. I do think this is a kitchen sink game for Baltimore, meaning they're going to put everything they have into this game because they know it's going to be an extreme uphill battle to make the playoffs if they do lose this game, because then you have 2 losses to Pittsburgh and then 1 loss to Cleveland, and that's not going to help their case for the playoffs. They're going to need to win the rest of their games and probably have some help if they lose this game. But prime time, Baltimore, Cleveland, division rivalry. It's going to be a good one. Same with Pittsburgh and Buffalo. A lot of very important matchups in the AFC: Kansas City, Miami, Indianapolis, Las Vegas. And then you have a couple also really good games in the NFC. Notable Arizona and New York. A game we didn't predict, Minnesota and Tampa Bay. And then New Orleans and Philadelphia. So a very packed Week 14. I can't believe we're already here. Only 4 more weeks left as a regular season. Big game next week. We got the Saints and the Chiefs. So I'm sure we'll talk about that on a future podcast, hopefully before then. Next weekend we have probably going to do some college football. We'll get the NBA stuff also in there as well. Conference championships are next weekend. We got some really good ones. Florida and Bama. We're talking about Clemson and Notre Dame. We're going to get that. Another go-round at that with Trevor Lawrence this time. And there's some other ones. Iowa State and Oklahoma. I have some interesting takes on that game. So we'll get into all this stuff eventually. It's just the timing of this podcast wasn't the greatest, but that's okay. We got it in. Like I said, more content coming at you in the near future. Probably give us a couple days, and then we'll probably be on again. Do you have anything you want to say? But I think that's going to do it for episode 50.
Yeah. Here's to the next 50, man. The grind's not going to stop. We're gonna keep trying to get better. Yeah, and it's been a fun ride. But it's 2:40 in the morning, and it's time to go to bed. We just hit the 2 hour mark. So deuces.
We appreciate all your questions. Thank you. If you do end up listening to this, we greatly appreciate it. Leave a 5-star rating and review. Like and subscribe. Do all those things that we say every time. And for all of you, I hope you're staying healthy. Keep staying healthy. Hopefully you're getting off school or whatever you may be doing. Take care of yourselves. We'll be back soon. And
if you made it to this point in the podcast, good for you, bro. That's wild.
Let's go conquer another 50. Hopefully it doesn't take us quite as long.
Yeah, hopefully.
This is a pretty long time, but that's okay.
Yeah.
I think we're going to start to do this more consistently. So with that's it. Imy Nixon, Michael Wayne, signing off at 2:41 a.m. on a Saturday morning.
Peace.